are humans inherently racist based on color? Without placing a racist concept in the analogy to essentially identify what ultimately causes racism from a non-racist concept, we may identify now that it is not specifically within the race, but at the individual level, at which we see a power struggle, or according to seeing color. Where might said racism stem from? We went from seeing the world in its complete colorness to then entering a screen-like mentality which only displayed black and white. In the rise of television, in the display of said world, according to the pixation or the color display, if I may place this analogy now, look at the world around you. It is full of color. Full of color. Which even within now your own experience, a concept such as an individual's hair color might strike a particular opposing force now. We might not necessarily see hair in the analogy as the point of racism, but in the point of color in our environment, which if we see a color that is too vibrant, you could say, we can actively see in said individual displaying said color in said environment, we see once again the root of what is known as racism, which this root is called discrimination, based on seeing color, which hair has nothing to do with race in its color, because you can technically color your hair any particular way regardless of the skin color, and regardless of the skin color, hair color creates a more, you could say, discriminative pattern. Why might that be? We went from seeing the world in full color to then being seen in a world or a screen that captured our attention for hours upon hours upon hours. That screen only displayed in black and white. The moment we then stepped back into the world, in the symbolizations used in cinema through the use of the colors of black and white, you can see in their own symbolizations, black representing a darkness and white representing a light. But in the analysis understanding cinema and the effect it has on the human mind, we went from seeing a world in full color to seeing a world divided into two colors, black and white. The moment we as individuals see and recognize not just hair color, but skin color as all colors of the world in your environment beyond your individual self. In the individual self is where you find the ultimately identifying root of this discrimination. It is simply an individual that simply is caught within said screen. And within said screen, we then create a house. And within said house, of those that grew up watching said screen for hours upon hours upon hours in the black and white, resulting in them in their own individual self, however long that may be, 50 to 60 plus to 70 plus years ago. In black and white, we then see the lineage of the individuals that have grown up only perceiving said world in black and white from the screen. The moment black and white television was introduced, we saw us essentially pull away from accepting all colors as part of our environment. And we began to actively see that once again, the moment we create a lessening experience of the human existence, simply just by introducing such a thing as black and white television, could alter the rest of time in the perception of accepting color within said environment, which said individuals descending of individuals that have grown up looking only at a screen or a house of black and white, you see their lineage descendants themselves carrying what we call a racist-like mentality based on color. Individuals that didn't grow up on black and white television don't have a racist tendency. And based on this particular racist tendency, that ultimately results in discrimination. And discrimination is caused when a person's right to be in their right to be surpasses another's right to be. The question I ask as the opposing individual is, as your right to be, does your right to be surpass another's right to be? The moment we separate the dehumanizing experience and place it under a particular house, which the more we create particular houses, the more we create particular houses, the more we create particular houses, the less we essentially see the entirety of the entire house. The more I create rooms within said house, the more I can divide the occupants of said house, creating borders. And we can create borders not just within the mind, we can create borders not just in the physical, we can create borders in the spiritual as well. By actively placing a perspective which takes away the overall picture of the universal experience. The moment I take away a aspect of said picture, the entirety, and paint a frame around it, I may capture its portrait or self. And in the capturing of self, you then see a room, a confinement. In the understanding of how to create confinement, I can actively trick you into walking into your own chamber without ever having to force you into said chamber. In the analysis, the basis of segregation, which segregation is a racist concept. The The more we place individuals under separate rooms, each housing a separate individual group, each housing a separate individual group, eventually we arrive to individuals no longer seeing the overall house. They only see the confinement of their individual room. And in said individual room, we see the individual suffering. In the victimization, how do I trick you into walking into said room? By making you feel victimized first, and in saying you will be accepted in said room, you can actively see individuals freely walking within their own chamber, which then the warden closes the door behind. These rooms are separating ourselves from the overall house. And the more we create these victimizing rooms, which is a leftist concept of embracing victimization in order to seek liberation, which is a false hope. Whom is said warden of this leftist ideology? I could actively place a Hasatan, an accuser, that accuses you of being said victim. And in said victim, I may now create your suffering, because you will actively choose to walk into said chamber of suffering. In order to fight the devil, we must expose it. And in the devil, we find, once again, individual chambers, which upon each individual chamber, we then no longer see the overall house. Without seeing the overall house, we lose our faith. Another leftist ideology. The more we created ways to essentially pull away from the colors of our existence, the more we seek to pull away from the universal experience all collectively share. Within said reality is a separate individual, and within each individual, an individual color. No individual is of the exact same shade of color. Every individual in themselves a hue of said color. A hue being the range at which color essentially saturates in. And in the saturation of said color, a measure of light, we see the hue man, the man of light. In the man of light, you arrive to the Christ. At Christ, in the self, which can be brought forth present within every single individual self, in the man of light, we see God's grace return itself once again back to the self. The moment God is re-identified, we re-experience God's grace. The love of a woman, your mother or your daughter, as a man, will be your greatest love you will ever have in your life. But in order to create this relationship from having a mother to having a daughter, you need to find the truest love of your life, your partner, which can come in all colors. And the more all colors mix, eventually they all once again re-arrive at the one true color, the one particular house, which the more we mix, the more we arrive at a particular individual color collectively shared in all individuals. The moment we accept one another in each of our individual colors within said individual colored universe, we arrive at, once again, returning under the same house, the house that brought forth God's grace to you as an individual. Your mother. Thank you.